This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Sue Herrera.
Falling into place? A lot has changed in the past few days, helping the S&P 500 put together its best two-day rally since August of last year.
Production freeze. Will a pledge by some of the world's largest oil producers succeed in tackling the global glut of crude?
And bridging the divide, increasing diversity in the nation's fastest growing and highest paying industry, while helping girls of color reach their dreams. The first part of a week-long series begins tonight on Nightly Business Report for Tuesday, February 16th.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Sharon Epperson, in tonight for Sue Herrera.
And I'm Tyler Matheson. Welcome, everyone. Okay, folks, let's not go crazy here. It is, after all, just 2 days. But in a year in which two-day rallies for stocks have been rarer than 2 days without a GOP presidential debate, investors will surely take it. In fact, since the intraday lows on Thursday, the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ are up about 5%. What's more, the rally is broad, and it seems to be sticking, and it even happened as oil prices fell. That's a rare disconnect this year. Today, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 222 points to 16,196. NASDAQ gained more than 2% or 98 points, and the S&P 500 rose 30. Two of this year's most battered sectors, finance and technology, led the way today. Bob Pisani reports on why the bulls are in charge of this market for now.
The markets are putting together one of the few multi-day rallies of the year. It's the best two-day rally for the S&P 500 since August of last year. What's changed? Well, there's a lot of talking, but it's high-level talking. And it's about three of the four biggest worries to the market. First, the Russia-Saudi talk of a freeze in oil production. Most don't believe it, but these are the two biggest producers in the world, at least agreeing that something's very wrong here. And even though oil is down, more than 60% of the S&P energy sector was up today. That's interesting. Secondly, there's concern about weak growth in China and a big devaluation of the currency there, the yuan. Traders took note of the record loans the Chinese banks gave out in January. That's good news. The consumer's strong. And an influential People's Bank of China governor strongly defended the yuan, implying that there would be no sudden devaluation. So the China market rallied overnight. Third, there's worry about European bank debt. ECB Chief Mario Draghi said he would not hesitate to act at a March policy meeting if the market turmoil threatened the economic outlook. And Deutsche Bank said last week they would be buying back some of their bonds, and others may do so. Finally, on the fourth worry, this is the Fed raising rates. There has been no jawboning in the last few days, but the Fed funds futures market indicates essentially no hikes for 2016, or at least traders believe there will be no hikes. But this is still not good enough. So much damage has been done that no one will believe anything until we put together a string of up days. We have not put together a three-day rally in the Dow or the S&P since December 21st to 23rd of last year. Wow. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Bob Pisani at the New York Stock Exchange.
As Bob just mentioned, some of the world's largest oil producers reached a deal to freeze production. But prices rose just briefly and settled lower because it wasn't the production cut that many had been looking for. Will there be additional, more meaningful agreements down the road? Jackie DeAngelis reports.
After weeks of headlines that big oil producers would have to cut production and speculation that OPEC could hold an emergency meeting, we finally heard from the Saudis and Russia that an agreement is in place to freeze output at current levels. But a freeze isn't a cut, and a freeze may not do much when output levels are at or near record highs.
The statement with Russia and Saudi Arabia, to me, is at least a step in the right direction. I don't know how much it's going to, let's say, affect the overall price near term here. But again, if some of the other players come into line also, we do have at least a consolidation of sentiment here, and this market could work its way a little higher.
So the question now, is this a first step? Could OPEC and non-OPEC parties that are adversaries agreeing to a freeze mean that they could agree to more? It could be, but remember who's staying out of this: Iran and the U.S. The Saudis won't cut if Iran doesn't cut, and U.S. producers have lowered costs. While they're suffering, they're still in the game.
$27.50 was a pivot point over the last, let's say, 2 weeks or so. So if we stay above there, the market still stays in somewhat positive range. But again, let's look at, let's say, the upside. There's tremendous resistance above this market at about anywhere between 31.5 and 31.80. That's, again, a number that's going to take some work for the market to get above and hold.
While surging supply has certainly been part of the story and forecasts haven't changed for global demand, there could be a caveat coming that's seasonal that could change the game here.
We're talking about a winter that could, say, really draw down heating oil stocks, natural gas stocks. If we have a nice early spring, we'll be driving season coming in. I think people are going to be very free with their gasoline.
But for the moment, the market is at a standstill. The freeze heard about today could keep it from moving lower, but it's not necessarily enough to drive it higher. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Jackie DeAngelis.
Let's turn now to Patrick Kaiser for more on the global markets and today's stock market rally and the rally around the globe the past couple of days. He's managing director and portfolio manager at Brandywine Global Investments. Patrick, welcome. Good to have you with us. We get paid to put on a program every night, so forgive us for putting a microscope on today's rally and thinking it may be a big thing. Do you think that the market had overdone it to the downside this year and that maybe things weren't as bad as stock prices would lead us to believe?
No, absolutely. I do believe that. Right now there's a hit song out there by a band called 21 Pilots, and the song's called Stressed Out. And I think that's really what the market has been most of this year. It's been stressed out. There's been driven by emotion. I think the market overall is pretty healthy. I think if Mr. Market were to go to a doctor, the doctor would tell Mr. Market, relax, get some rest. You're really doing better than you think.
Well, the market is obviously still troubled, or at least investors are troubled by the market. Many wondering, will we see a recession, what they should do? What do you tell investors to do, and what are you doing with your money? Where are you putting money right now?
Well, right now we're telling investors that the economy is still really pretty strong fundamentally, whether it be the employment picture. Obviously consumption is doing pretty well. Gas prices are down. So we're really sending the message that the economy is not doing poorly, and that there are a lot of areas, financials, energy, some of the more cyclical industries out there, that are implying as if we're heading into a global financial crisis or a deep recession. So we're really out there with two messages. One, the economy looks okay. And then second, because we're not headed into a terrible environment, there's some real value out there. What matters is the price you pay, of course, but for an investor that's willing to go against the crowd, we see some interesting long-term opportunities. And
I know Brandywine, and that's what you do. You go against the crowd and you pick value plays. You can name names if you want. You can shy away from naming names if you would prefer it that way. But I gather implicit in what you just said is that you're out looking at financial names, at energy, maybe at some of the technology stocks that have been hit so hard.
Yeah, so let me give you an example of the big banks. So if we're looking at names like Citigroup or Bank of America, Citigroup right now trading below $40, I think is where it closed today. Tangible book value is a little bit north of $60. People say, well, that doesn't matter. But the reality is for Citigroup to be worth $40, you have to believe that first they stop earning $24 billion a year, and then almost 15% of their loans go bad. And it just doesn't make any sense. We talk to bank executives every week. Credit is really looking okay across the economy. There's obviously pockets here and there, but big banks is certainly an area. I own those personally. Brandywine owns them. So, I do have an interest there. We have voted with our money in that regard. And then energy, the reality of $30 oil is that all the major producers, the three largest countries in the world that produce oil are Saudi Arabia. They are having massive budget deficits with oil where it is. Russia is running through its reserves, and the U.S. producers are losing $2 billion a week. $30 is simply not sustainable. So if you take a time frame longer than a week or longer than a day or longer than a month, I think you do quite well in these stocks. Right. And that, as you said, that's what we do here at Brandywine.
Patrick, thank you very much for your help tonight. We appreciate it. Patrick Kaiser with Brandywine Global Investments. Well, low oil prices forcing an offshore oil driller into bankruptcy. Paragon Offshore said it won support from a majority of its creditors to cut its debt through a so-called prepackaged bankruptcy agreement. Paragon says it expects to maintain sufficient liquidity throughout that restructuring process.
Tyler, Paragon Offshore may not be alone. A new study says 1/3 of oil producers globally are at risk of filing for bankruptcy this year. Auditing and consulting firm Deloitte says low commodity prices will hurt some companies' access to cash and ability to cut debt. The study was based on a review of 500 publicly traded oil and natural gas companies worldwide.
To housing we go as the spring selling season gets underway. Home builders are slightly less confident about present sales and buyer activity. The National Association of Home Builders says a gauge of sentiment fell to its lowest level since May. Some economists attribute the drop to poor weather in February.
Manufacturing in the New York area shrank for the 7th straight month. The latest Empire State Index missed expectations, but there was a bright spot. Orders fell at a slower pace than in January. A strong dollar, low oil prices, and weak global demand have been weighing on the manufacturing sector.
One industry that has been doing well is the toy business. Sales last year were the strongest they've been in years, and now thousands of manufacturers, distributors, vendors are hoping to build on that momentum as they gather at the North American Toy Fair. Morgan Brennan got the fun assignment to look at the serious business of play.
This is the North American Toy Fair, the largest convention of its kind, where more than 30,000 toy makers, vendors, and the occasional celebrity converge.
Last year, we had the 6 original teams, and now we're adding 12 more this spring, and it's amazing that the toys are going off the shelves pretty fast.
From Wowie's robotic dog to Barbie's new hoverboard, companies are unveiling their newest gadgets and playthings. The NPD Group says U.S. toy sales grew nearly 7% last year to over $19 billion, one of the strongest performances in years. And experts hope 2016's product lineup will keep that momentum going.
We're going to see similar growth. We're on a phase now where we're seeing year-over-year growth. A lot of innovation from technology, a lot of traditional play coming back, licensing being very strong. So we believe we're going to see a few years of good growth here.
Star Wars has helped, with a number of companies benefiting from the franchise's force. Lego saw sales surge last year and expects that to carry over in 2016.
Ninjago is a great example of our own story where we're building our own license, our own story. But then, of course, Star Wars is another one where we buy in a license, and the same with superheroes. But there's no doubt the importance of stories in the toy industry is ever increasing.
Licensing is a big business, accounting for roughly 45% of the overall toy industry. 2016's film roster should continue to fuel sales.
The hopes are very high, and a lot of them are on the fantasy kind of genre with the Avengers and Justice League, Star Wars Rogue One, but there are also other movies that are on the softer side, shall we say, Angry Birds and Ghostbusters, the all-female Ghostbusters.
Playmobil is hoping its licensing deal with the National Hockey League will help propel it into the U.S. mass market.
What we decided to do was to go after it nationwide, and we are actually promoting it on television this year. And we really feel it'll be the mainstay of our line for 2016.
But while some toy makers are debuting new lines, others are revamping classic ones. Take Barbie. Mattel's 57-year-old iconic doll is getting more eye colors, hairstyles, even more body types in an effort to appeal to more girls and stoke more sales. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Morgan Brennan in New York City.
Still ahead, the new entrant to the world of fashion is not what you might expect. Neil Kashkari, the president of the Minneapolis Fed and former head of the government's financial industry bailout, said he wants to toughen banking laws to prevent another crisis. In his first speech as a Fed official, Kashkari said that while significant changes have been made to the financial system, more are needed.
I believe we must begin this work now and give serious consideration to a range of options, including breaking up the large banks into smaller, less connected, less important entities, turning large banks into public utilities by forcing them to hold so much capital they virtually can't fail, with regulation akin to that of a nuclear power plant, taxing leverage throughout the financial system to reduce systemic risks wherever they lie.
In his speech, Kashkari made it clear that he feels the biggest banks still pose a risk to our economy.
President Obama reiterated today that he will nominate what he calls a qualified Supreme Court candidate to succeed the late Justice Antonin Scalia, who died over the weekend. Many members of the GOP say he should hold off in this election year and let his successor choose Scalia's replacement. The conflict will likely spawn a political Donnybrook, but while that drama plays out, there are a number of important social and business-related cases before the current 8-member court that could be affected by Scalia's absence. Hampton Pearson reports.
Inside the High Court chamber today, Justice Antonin Scalia's chair and bench area draped in black, a High Court tradition honoring the death of each sitting justice that dates back to 1873. On the horizon, the likelihood the Supreme Court may have to operate with just 8 justices for more than a year, given the political standoff between the White House and Republican-controlled Senate over choosing Scalia's successor.
They're going to fight it till there's another president. It doesn't look like the Republican-controlled Senate is going to consider any Obama nominee.
When you look at the conservative versus liberal makeup of the court absent Justice Scalia, it means that 4-4 ties are possible, even probable. When the justices are tied, the lower court ruling stands, and that means no national precedent. Some examples. In Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association, focused on the power of public employee unions, a split decision would be a victory for the union, seeking to uphold mandatory union dues. Zubik versus Burwell is a religious freedom challenge by charities and nonprofit organizations to mandatory birth control coverage as part of Obamacare. 7 separate petitions are part of this case because the lower courts are divided. Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt, a Texas case that'll determine how far states can go to restrict abortion. It could be a setback for abortion rights groups because some restrictions approved by a lower court would go into effect in the Lone Star State. And next month, Puerto Rico versus Franklin, California Free Trust will examine legal options for Puerto Rico to restructure its massive public debt.
The court has survived and it decides cases, and there's a number of different ways that it can approach that. It can decide cases on narrower grounds. That has happened in recent past. It can make different decisions in the types of cases that it takes.
The most basic challenge for the Supreme Court, resolving unsettled law, just got a lot more complicated. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Hampton Pearson at the Supreme Court.
Home security firm ADT saw its shares skyrocket, and that's where we begin tonight's Market Focus. Shares rose on the news that ADT has agreed to be acquired by private equity firm Apollo Global Management for nearly $7 billion. Apollo will pay $42 per share of ADT, and that's a 56% premium over ADT's Friday closing price. Once the deal finalizes, ADT will merge with Apollo's home security company, Protection One. Shares of Apollo gained more than 5% to $14.12, while ADT shares surged more than 47% to $39.64. Community Health Systems, which is the country's second largest for-profit hospital chain, posted an unexpected loss yesterday for its latest quarter. Revenue also fell short of analyst expectations. The company cited lower admissions due to a slow flu season and slower than expected benefits from its 2-year-old acquisition of rival Health Management Associates. Shares of Community Health Systems lost 22% to $14.56. Generac saw revenue and profit fall in its fourth quarter due to weak sales in its commercial and industrial segments. But despite the loss, the maker of generators still managed to top analyst estimates. Generac said it expects sales to climb up to 12% for 2016 thanks to a new acquisition expected to close this quarter. Shares surged more than 17% to $32.75.
The Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba disclosed it had purchased a more than 5% stake in Groupon. The transaction, which was disclosed in an SEC filing late Friday, also revealed that Alibaba is now the 4th largest owner of the Daily Deals company. Groupon shares soared 41%. Yeah, you heard me right, to $4.08, while Alibaba was up nearly 9% to $66.29. Apple announced it has filed plans to sell $12 billion worth of debt to fund its share buyback program and dividend payments. The smartphone maker will sell a series of bonds maturing between 2 and 30 years. The offering also included a 7-year green bond where proceeds will go to fund environmentally friendly projects. Apple shares rose nearly 3% to $96.56.
Call it digital couture. Fashion Week is underway in New York, but it's not a new up-and-coming designer that's turning heads in the ultra-competitive design industry. Courtney Reagan has the story.
There's a new entrant to the world of fashion, and it's not who you might expect. printer maker Epson joined the ranks of New York's Fashion Week with a presentation featuring 11 designers, all with textiles printed by Epson printers. A printer software and the finishing hardware system can be purchased for as little as $15,000. Epson says it's the first time a large company has developed a complete printing solution of its kind for the fashion industry. An industry Epson thinks is ripe for production disruption as designers and brands look to get consumers access to the newest looks faster than ever before.
The designer has the ability to actually come up with an idea, create the idea, and actually have fabric printed and within 24 hours have it in their hands.
Only 3% of the $7.5 billion global printed textile market currently uses digital printing technology. So not only is it a hopeful new growth engine for Epson, but it also offers new opportunities to smaller independent designers to make their mark on the fashion world.
In the past, I've encountered problems with the technologies that existed where the vibrancy of colors were lost and the details were lost. This new technology, I could see the possibilities, and you know, all the vibrancy of color is kept, all the details are kept, and it's like a dream come true.
Speed to market has long been a hot topic in the world of fashion, with names like Zara, H&M, and Forever 21 wearing the crown for fast fashion, or getting designs from conception to stores in as little as 3 weeks, a far cry from the traditional 6 months. It's moving even big, high-end brands like Burberry to work on shaking up the fashion ecosystem when it comes to speed in order to satisfy consumers' demand for instant gratification. Time will tell whether Epson will be part of the solution. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Courtney Reagan in New York City.
Coming up, Bridging the Divide by Building a Robot, the program that is empowering girls of color to pursue degrees in computer science. The first part of our week-long series is next.
There is a wide gap between black and white in many sectors of the U.S. economy. This week, in a special series, we take a look at the efforts to bridge that divide, starting today with education. One way to increase diversity in the nation's tech sector, the fastest growing and highest paying industry, is to make science, technology, engineering, and math education more accessible to everyone. I talked to some young girls who are part of that change, thanks to a pioneering nonprofit group.
I had no interest in doing this. I thought it was kind of boring at first, but then when I actually started doing it, it was fun.
11-year-old Madison Harvey is one of 300 girls learning how to build a robot at this weekend workshop.
What is our purpose? To build our own futures.
It's put on by Black Girls Code, a nonprofit aiming to bridge the gap in STEM education for young girls of color.
She's excited about science and math and engineering, and what other opportunity for her to be around other girls that look just like her.
Couldn't this one go right here?
Many of these girls don't have role models in engineering or computer science. Black women make up less than 3% of the workforce at the biggest tech companies. Kimberly Bryant, an electrical engineer who worked in biotech for more than 20 years, understands their dilemma.
I was one of maybe 2 or 3 students of color in my electrical engineering class when I went to college.
Bryant founded Black Girls Code with hopes of literally changing the face of technology.
When we generally think of a computer scientist now, it does not look like a woman of color. It does not look of someone that is of Hispanic background. It's very much white, male, dominant. And that's important for us to show that black girls can code and they can do many other things in terms of a leadership standpoint in this field.
Most black girls aren't into computers and stuff. They think it's nerd and stuff, but it's not. It's really cool and fun. I encourage other people to do it, and it'll help open up new worlds and paths for you.
Black Girls Code held its first event 4 years ago in San Francisco with 8 girls. Today, the nonprofit has chapters in 8 U.S. cities and Johannesburg, South Africa, with plans to expand to Dallas and Miami this year. It's funded through corporate sponsors and partnerships, donations, and a $35 fee to attend workshops, which can be waived in some cases. Since starting in 2011, Black Girls Code has offered workshops to about 5,000 girls, ages 7 to 17. They're learning everything from computer programming to coding to building mobile applications and even robotics. Many of these girls won't just come to one Black Girls Code workshop. Madison is here for the second time.
You interact with people and it's like, oh, I enjoy this, and you come back and do it again and again and again.
The organization, though still young, is already achieving its intended impact. Some former participants are majoring in computer science at top colleges, including Spelman and Dartmouth.
We're really starting to see the girls take what they learn at Black Girls Code and take that spark and create something even bigger for themselves.
Thank you.
Madison may just follow that same path.
Got me an open mind, so it's like a door open for me. So it's a possibility that I might want to pursue this.
Black Girls Code founder Kimberly Bryant said by 2040, she wants to reach 1 million girls. And with black males making up only 4% of the workforce in the biggest tech companies, she plans to start Black Boys Code very soon. And tomorrow, our series Bridging the Divide looks at an organization that's helping to close the wage and employment gap and has already helped thousands of low-income inner-city youth join the ranks of corporate America.
That little girl Madison's on her way.
Isn't she?
Oh, what a doll.
Yeah, she's great. She's going to be leading one of these companies one day.
Yeah, I hope I'm retired by then, but who knows? She'd be my boss easily.
That's Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Sharon Epperson. Thanks so much for watching.
I'm Tyler Mathis, and thanks for me as well. Have a great evening, everybody. See you tomorrow.